Welcome to the New to Wrestling podcast, where I, your host, Xavier Cruz, a lifelong wrestling fan, will take a lifelong friend through the action, the joys, and the drama of the world of professional wrestling. My co-host, Kelsey Silva, has been bitten by the wrestling bug, and I want to invite you to join us as I take her through the moments that made me a fan. So if you're new to wrestling and would like to get brought up to speed, or a fan who would like to relive some classic matches, promos, and segments through fresh eyes, join us as we embark on a journey through the Attitude Era and beyond. Welcome to the New to Wrestling podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the New to Wrestling podcast. This is the first edition that we are doing. I am Xavier Cruz, and I'm joined by my lovely co-host and lifelong friend, Kelsey Silva. How are you? How are you doing?
Good. How are you? I'm so excited.
I
Long
know,
time coming.
honestly, this has been in the works for a couple months,
hmm
literally, and a couple years in the imagination.
In the ether, yeah.
Exactly. So I figured since this is our first episode, we can kind of do a few introduction kind of moments. Just tell us a little bit about you and your kind of relationship with wrestling. I know it is brief generally, and then I'll kind of go in and do the same on my end.
Okay. Like Xavier said, we've been lifelong friends. And I think that I kind of caught the wrestling bug mostly from watching it with Xavier. We would get together at his place, at his apartment, on Wednesdays and watch it. We get food, watch it. And I think what really sucked me in is the drama. I'm here for the drama, the costumes, the makeup. I just think it's so entertaining, and it just, I don't know, I just like once we started watching it and then like chitter chattering about it, I just couldn't, it just gets so addicting. So my introduction has been brief. I only know things when Xavier gives me the tea. That's all I got. But I am so excited to learn more because I love a backstory. I love a history. I want to know who did what to who. I want to know all the ins and outs, the tea, who's got beef with who, and they resolved it. I want to know all of this stuff. So yeah, I'm so excited.
Oh my God, yes. So I am guilty of basically anytime that I can get anybody to watch wrestling with me, I'm gonna make the attempt. And I really got lucky that Kelsey kind of jumped on and really started like enjoying it. Basically, I would have her come over every like Wednesday, and we would watch specifically like AEW Dynamite because it was new, and that
hmm
was kind of what I was watching a lot of at the time. But basically, I am a lifelong like wrestling fan. I have been watching since I was like 2 years old. I can remember my father like kind of explaining like watching like Ric Flair. And it's just something we've always kind of like sat down and like watched together. The premise of this show is we are going to take Kelsey through the entirety of the Attitude Era specifically. But once we get kind of caught up, the world is our oyster. There's so much wrestling to watch. So the idea is that there's so much about the Attitude Era that one I was really young for. So like we are actually starting in the year 1996, so the two of us were 2 years old when that started happening. So there is definitely like just swaths of just like stuff that I've forgotten about, or just I've like made up in my head that that's the way things were, and probably just were not the case. So I'm really excited to kind of watch through like a first timer's eyes, because I think that's really exciting because it's just kind of like the wonder of like discovering something that you like kind of really enjoy or really like start to love. And
Mm.
it's like when you watch like kids like go to like Disney World for the first time or something where they're just like they're just so stoked about it. And like for me, like I enjoy watching other people enjoy the things that I do. Like so that's kind of the premise of the show, and that's kind of how we're going to kick things off. This week, we started with the June 24th, 1996 episode of Monday Night Raw. So that
Mm.
had it's a very different feel than the wrestling we are currently watching today. And we'll
Totally.
get into that in a little bit. I'm gonna break down just kind of the card of matches that happened, and then we're gonna kind of just dissect it a little bit. So we had Ahmed Johnson versus Hunter Hearst Helmsley, better known as Triple H, or will soon become known as Triple H. We had the Body Donnas versus the Brooklyn Brawler and a jobber, someone they I don't even think they actually said his name the entirety of the match, so
Nope.
couldn't even tell you. We had Vader, Owen Hart, and the British Bulldog versus a group of jobbers. Again, it was Salvia Vega and two people I've literally never heard of. And then the main event was The Undertaker versus Stone Cold Steve Austin. And we are coming on the tails of Stone Cold Steve Austin's infamous King of the Ring Austin 316 speech. So this is really the first episode where we really start referring to Stone Cold Steve Austin as he will become known as kind of like the rattlesnake. And you kind of throughout the episode you'll really hear the commentators like repeatedly say his name so that it like starts to stick into the into the minds of all the viewers. So yeah, it was an interesting time to kind of like go back into 1996 for sure.
Definitely.
Kelsey, what did you think were like kind of the biggest differences as far as like what we've watched like currently versus kind of like going back in time to like 1996? I mean, other than like the hair, because it
Oh
was
my god.
tall and it was all over the place.
There was a lot of blonde with brown roots, a lot of hair gel, but that's also the hair gel's not uncommon. And also I was gonna say the costuming is still the same fabulosity. Um, I think the biggest difference I noticed, and I said it to you when we were watching it, was that they don't spend so much time on the top rope. Like I feel like now when we watch, they're like on the top rope, they like set it up. They really because I don't know if they're doing more complex moves on the top of the rope now. But they just like they get up there and they jump. They get up there and they jump. That was like a big thing I noticed. And also there's not as much like when we watch now, there's so much where they're like, they've got the guy on his back, and then like it's like three, two, or one, two, and then he like the shoulder break, and everyone's like, oh, like everyone freaks out. And it happens like at least min 4 to 5 times, if not more. And now this is just like a pin or something. And I think this was the first match I saw with an outside interference that caused a disqualification or like a forfeit or however that ended. I'd never seen that before. And it was with glitter, iconic. Like there was a
Right.
lot, but I think for me, those are the biggest differences.
Well, definitely for sure. So what you're gonna like kind of start seeing is we're kind of in a like very transitional period of like where we're in like the 1980s, like the earlier part of the 90s. Like if you especially in the WWF, WWE, if unless you were like 6'5" and like 300 pounds, like you were not going to be like featured on the show, essentially. So like
Oh,
now
that makes sense too.
yeah,
Now that you
exactly.
say that.
So now like you're gonna start seeing kind of like smaller wrestlers, or at least more like average sized people. And they're just, they're not 300 pounds, so they're gonna be able to like spend more time on the top rope and actually like they become more and more, and especially when you see kind of the advent of like Shawn Michaels. Shawn Michaels is really
Mm,
kind of like I don't want to say like the first, but he's one of the first to really kind of capture that style of what will become kind of like the staples of wrestling today. So like
oh.
yeah, and like you'll see him in next week when we watch the July 1st episode, because he's going to be wrestling there. But you'll see that he's a much smaller competitor, and he's just like
Mm,
far more agile than what a lot of what you kind of saw today was.
That
Um,
makes so much sense now that you say that, because 'cause they're all humongous. So, like, obviously going to the top rope, if they're 300 pounds and 6'9", like, that's not they're not doing, like, flips and things, like, off
right,
the top rope.
exactly.
Oh my god, that makes so much sense. Okay.
What on the card was like your favorite match?
Definitely The Undertaker and Stone Cold Steve Austin, because did I say that right? I'm sorry.
Yes, 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 yes,
Okay. Because
yes.
it was, of course, the drama for me. I've never seen The Undertaker. I've obviously heard of The Undertaker. I've never seen an entrance, and it was just like the attention to detail, first of all, with like the entrance, the all black, the urn, the purple light on the purple outfit with the black, incredible. And then just I feel like the match itself was super engaging. There was more, I feel like more flips, more things I wasn't expecting. A lot of like broken legs. Like it was it was a lot
Oh,
more moments where I was like, "Oh my god, there's no way." It was crazy. I feel like
no,
I was more on the edge of my seat for that one.
exactly, and you're really gonna see, like, kind of, who is going to be, like, kind of like the main event people. The
Okay.
Undertaker at this point has been kind of on that level for, a while, but now we're gonna start seeing, like, Stone Cold Steve Austin kind of stepping into that role,
Mm.
which is why this was, for me, this is why I started here. One, because it's right after the King of the Ring and that, like, speech, which really kind of, for me, in my mind, is, like, the start of the, like, Attitude Era. That's when we're gonna really start seeing kind of a shift in, like, program that's like geared towards children and then
Oh.
programming that's geared towards more like young adults.
Oh.
Um, but you're really gonna see like for me, like you can tell when wrestlers are kind of like in that like main event or like just kind of really understand like the kind of the psychology of wrestling
Okay.
because they get you engaged. Like you are a like new passive fan and you like and you said it yourself, you've never seen The Undertaker before, and you're very like, this is also, like, one of your first exposures to Stone Cold Steve Austin outside of, like,
Mhm.
who he is as, like, a pop culture person.
Right.
Um, but they had you, like, interested in what they were doing. You
Fascinated.
believed that, like, The Undertaker was, like, hurt. And then and then at the end, we have, like, an involvement, but with from Goldust, who in and of itself is a wild character. You
Wild.
haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg as far as how weird this guy is.
Which is
Um,
scary because it was so weird. There was
that's
already so much weird, and
that's
if
what
that's
I'm
the tip of the iceberg, scary.
no, exactly, because he's such a hard character to, like, describe, because he's just so out there, and there's something, like, I respect so much about just kind of,
Mm.
like just absolutely, like, losing yourself in a character where it's just,
Nothing
like,
if not on brand.
fully. So, like, it's very much just, like, he just commits to it so hard that, like, it's kind of it's the same kind of awkwardness you get from, like, watching, like, The Office or something where you're just like, "I'm so uncomfortable," but, like, he's gonna make you sit in the awkwardness for as
Mm,
long as humanly possible to get a reaction out of you.
incredible.
And, like, from even what it seems like is just like he has I don't know how much the wrestlers even know of what he's, like, going to do, so, like, the
Mm.
reactions seem very genuine. Like, literally the end of this match is, like, it's one of the few times where you see, like, disqualification by, like, glitter. He literally just threw glitter in The Undertaker's
It
face,
was so
and that was the
crazy.
end of the match. Are there any, like, characters that were, like, wrestling or otherwise that, like, really, like, stood out to you or one that you wanna see more of? Like, first impressions, because we had Ahmed Johnson on this episode,
Yeah,
who
it's dense.
dense,
Very
very,
dense.
very
I said
dense.
when Xavier and I were watching it, I said, I was like, "I've seen knee pads, I've seen shin pads, I've seen elbow pads. I've never seen a man with thigh pads." Like, he meant business.
Oh, and he was throwing around Triple H.
Throwing around, he did a lot of that was and his speech was amazing. He was very fascinating, and he was very to me, very limber for somebody that big. Like,
Yeah,
he was, like, doing a lot of throwing around, like you said. Very interested. I also was only interested for some reason my first only because, and I'm forgetting the name, the Brooklyn.
The Brooklyn
Yes.
Brawler.
Brooklyn Brawler, only because I was like, this man literally looks like he came off the sidelines. I was like, I don't understand who this is because I said he's wearing jeans and a Yankees t-shirt, and then you're like, it's the Brooklyn Brawler, and I was like, oh, okay, I got it.
Really
But I was
connected
like,
those
that
dots.
that could be any one of my family members. Like, just came off the side. I was like, what is his story? Like, he's very impassioned about fighting. I love that. He's truly a Brooklyn native then. But that
Honestly.
was honestly, and I was like very curious about him. And then of course the Undertaker. I was like completely enamored by his entrance, the way he fought. I'm confused about the urn, but I want to know more. Like the powers, the pallbearer, like what there's just so many questions. But the vibe, the commit to the bit, I'm so here for that.
Oh, yeah, and the thing is, like, he becomes, like, so synonymous with his, like, and his, like, there are very few people, actually probably like nobody, who commits to being the character as much as The Undertaker does. Um,
Incredible.
he wouldn't be like seen in like public, like he would like hide. He wouldn't let like fans get near him. And this man wrestled for like 30 years. Like
That is
30 years
crazy.
of like committing to just like absolutely like being that character out in public. So like the awe that is his like entrance and like everything about him is made so much larger due to the fact that nobody knows anything about him, and
So much mystery.
he loves to keep it that way.
Oh,
uh like and you eat it up, you just with a spoon,
a
because like
spoon.
he gives you nothing, and you just like,
Nothing.
and then you're just stuck there just like begging for it. You're just like, tell
Sounds
me
like me.
anything about this man.
Well,
um
that was gonna be a question I was gonna ask because I was like, so we're talking about like people who commit to the bit. I'm like, do they in real life, like if people see them out, are they like always in character? Is that just like their life's commit or
so
their career's commitment? Is like if someone runs into somebody at the grocery store, are they just like,
right.
that's
So that was historically, like, back when there were, like, territories and things, like, that was something that was, like, they had to follow, like, tooth and nail.
wow.
Like, you couldn't be if you were, like, a how they, like, distinguish them is the good guys are called, like, baby faces or faces, and then the bad guys are
Or
called
heels?
heels.
I actually knew
Yes.
that.
So if you couldn't be seen like out in public, if you were a baby face, like having a beer with like a heel, that like just wouldn't fly. Like that's not something they were like
No.
allowed to do. And now like up to the point where we are, they're still very much like they more so commit to it. But once kind of the advent of like the internet comes, where like people could just kind of find out everything, it becomes less of a thing. So like today, like it's very much like the fans are very much aware, even like the younger fans are aware that like they play characters. Like these
Right.
aren't like, but up until like the advent of the internet, like they committed to the bit. Like that's who they were, like in as far as the public knew, every day.
That
Uh,
is crazy. That's
which
like
is
being method for life.
for sure. So and like we even have like examples of like Ric Flair, who you will come to find is somebody who like committed so hard to the bit that like I don't even know if Ric Flair knows who he was before he was Ric Flair. Like, and but like if you think about it, like that got him to where he is. Like he's so successful and he's such a like
Mhm.
pop culture he's in so many songs. You know how
You
many
know, ask
rap
the
songs?
Migos. I was gonna say Ric Flair, bitch, go woo on us.
So like there's so many just he's such a prevalent part of like just culture now that like I doubt he'd have complaints about that. I don't think he misses whoever he was prior to
Mm,
being Ric Flair, but they committed. They were in it. And the thing is like the thing that's like extra extraordinary is like they wrestle like we we're gonna watch like a weekly show. They used to have like two weekly shows and like a pay-per-view like a month. And those are the only
mm,
the things that are televised. They would have like house shows. So shows that are not televised, they would be on the road like 300 plus days of the year. So
Oh
imagine
my
having to
god.
pretend to be somebody the majority of the time for 300 days of the year. Like, that's
That
gotta
is
be
crazy.
like a mental fortitude that I don't understand.
Therapy could never undo that.
No,
Undo
the
those
thing, and
knots.
like this was the 90s. Like who was going? And
No, we
also
didn't know what that was.
when would they even have time to, because they're in like a different city like every day. Yeah.
Wow. And that also because like they're not only just like performing, they're training, they're like,
Yeah,
doing like they're doing the whole thing. Oh my god, that is crazy.
I know. It must have been just like absolutely exhausting.
Whoa.
There wasn't like one super like part this week. But I'm kind of, because we're going back in time, I'm kind of interested to see just kind of what comes up that just like absolutely would not fly today.
Mm,
Because I think that's just gonna be an interesting thing to kind of just like look back on and be like, that was on television. Like
yeah.
fully. The only one I could like think of was this episode had a part where the Body Donnas had a kind of like fake Sunny, which was just a dude dressed in drag, essentially. Where
Yeah.
like as today that probably wouldn't fly, just because typically that is a thing, like the just men dressed as women as like the punchline of like a joke.
Right.
And where we are like today, that probably was the only thing that really like stood out to me, that probably like wouldn't fly today.
Yeah.
Did
Especially when
anything
they're like,
else
you'd
like
be as I was gonna say, especially when they said like she would be as ugly in the dark as she is in the light. I was like, oh my god,
no, fully.
disgusting.
And then like
Very insulting.
there's this one part where she like literally just starts referring to, or Sunny starts referring to the drag character just like as a beast. And like I was just like, yikes. I was like, that's brutal. That's absolutely
Yeah.
brutal.
Very
um
brutal.
but yeah, that's the only
Makeup
thing
was
I
laid
could,
though.
yo, honestly, like whoever
The
did
makeup was laid. I don't know who did that Sunny
the
impersonation makeup, but it was laid.
she looks slicked back.
She was slick, not a single wrinkle, contoured to hell, like so good.
That's amazing. Um and
When
then
can I ask a question?
yeah,
When because right now is it World Wrestling Federation?
yes. Yes, yes,
So
yes.
and then at some point it switches to entertainment, right?
Correct.
WWE. When does that happen? And
When
do
does
they make
that
it like a big deal? Do they like go like we're gonna be this now? Like
Okay,
they make it
so
like the whole
do you
thing?
know the story behind like what happened, why they had to change their name?
No.
Okay, so they're already they the WWE was sued by the WWF, the World Wildlife Foundation. Um
Oh, no, they were not.
yes, they were, because it was
Stop.
their organization predates the WWE. So they lost that lawsuit, so they had to change their name. But that doesn't come until like I believe the early like 2000s. So, like, they were just, like, running
Wow.
with it for a while
A
before.
minute.
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
I
and,
did not know that.
so, yeah, so, like, it basically, yeah, they get through all of the '90s, like, call using, like, the WWF. And then that
Wow.
happens, and they have to change it. And it's really, like, I mean, I don't remember, because in the early 2000s, I was in like 5 or 6. So,
Yeah.
like, but to me, I think they just, like, changed the name and just, like, we're like, "Okay," like, moving on.
Mhm, mhm,
Because I
mhm.
used to have, like, old, like, wrestling, like, DVDs, and they would have, like, the WWF, like, blurred out on, like, the turnbuckles, like, in
Oh
matches
my
as if it was, like, a
god.
curse word or, like,
Oh my
something. So I
god.
think they, like, really lost that lawsuit. Like, they were just like, "We are you are not allowed to use this whatsoever."
Ever
Um,
wow, that's fascinating.
yeah. Oh, there's a few times that the WWE gets sued, and as we get through, like, the times, we'll go into that a little bit
You
more,
know I love
mostly
some
because
legal tea.
it's fascinating. Like, it's the history and the drama inside and outside of professional wrestling is just A1. Just truly it's humanity unfolds.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that's kind of the gist. Thank you for taking the time to watch these with me, and
Oh,
coming
yeah.
on this adventure. I think
So
we're gonna have
fun.
a grand time,
Me
just kind
too.
of making our way through. So yeah. So all right, guys, this has been the first episode of the New to Wrestling podcast. Join us next week. We are going to watch the July 1st episode of Monday Night Raw, which I believe is going to feature Shawn Michaels versus Marty Jannetty and The Undertaker versus Goldust.
I have to
Um,
see that. I'm
so
like,
yeah, so
what he
you're
gonna
gonna get to
do?
see the just a little bit more of Goldust unfolded, because you really got to watch him in a match to see how just odd he
I
is.
am so confused by him, and I'm like, I just like I'm very curious to see his style of wrestling because it just like is there going to be more glitter? Like what's going to happen?
There's
What's going to be the costume? I gotta know.
yeah, wait till you see his like entrance. I know you're
Can't
gonna be,
wait.
yes. All right, so thank you. And all right, guys, so we will see you next week.
Yeah, we'll see you next week.
All right, have a great week, everybody.
Bye.